بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا ومولانا محمد الصادق الوعد الأمين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين وبعد. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to our reminder here on Sunday, which is on racism and of course how Islam deals with racism in the teachings and guidances and laws of Islam. And of course this is now a hot topic. We see protests happening and riots and brutality against minorities, especially the black community, and we see prejudices, we see institutional racism, things that are deeply embedded and have just come to the fore recently, and discussions have arisen, and people are saying we're going to change and so forth. And it's something that we need to understand and talk about from an Islamic perspective as Muslims, to understand where we should be and what we should be doing, and how what our religion, the religion of Islam, teaches us. And for that reason, the best thing to start off with is the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is the Quran al-Kareem. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran in Surah Hujurat, Surah 49, ayah number 13, Ya ayyuhan nas. And to note, this is an ayah which addresses all of mankind. It says, "O you who," doesn't say "O you who believe." It says, "O mankind, Ya ayyuhan nas, inna khalaqnakum min dhakarin wa untha, wa ja'alnakum shu'uban wa qaba'ila lita'arafu, inna akramakum 'inda Allahi atqakum, inna Allaha 'alimun khabir." O mankind, Ya ayyuhan nas, surely we created you from dhakarin wa untha, a male and a female. And we made you shu'uban, we made you nations, groups of people, wa qaba'il, and tribes, lita'arafu, that you may know each other, that you may learn about each other, share your cultures, share your practices, your traditions. Inna akramakum, who's the best, who is the most noble in the sight of Allah, inda Allahi, the one most noble with Allah is the one who is atqakum, the most God-fearing, the most righteous, the more God conscious, the more pious. Inna Allah alimun khabir. And Allah mentions two attributes of His knowledge and awareness of creation. Surely Allah is the all-knowing, the all-aware. There's a very beautiful ayah of the Quran, and often quoted around the topic of racism and equality and the purpose of having different nations and tribes. And this is the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So from a faith perspective, if we look at it from a faith perspective, we have to approach the concept of the other, regardless of its male, female, or different tones of skin color, or different practices, or different nationalities now, and different aspects of life. We have to look at what the Quran and what the Sunnah say. We have to look at what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger teaches, are not what may be popular, not what maybe sound good because things sound good at some times, they don't sound so good at other times. Things might seem okay now, they might change overnight. Islam is the set of guidelines and ordinances and guidance that is everlasting, that is for all times and all places and all societies. And what we find in this ayah is a beautiful outline of the purpose of our creation, and the diversity in our outer appearances and inner feelings and practices and cultures and societal values and traditions. And that is that we were made different to celebrate those differences. We were made different to learn from each other. Ta'arafu, ma'rifa. This comes from the root word ta'aruf. Ta'aruf comes from arafa, to know. Ta'arafu, to know each other, to learn about each other, to realize what there is in the other. And so we need to understand that if that is what Islam teaches, then surely it has to be totally, and it is totally, against racism. What is racism? Maybe we should define this. I just want to read something I've got here. It says, racism is a belief that a particular race is superior or inferior to another, that a person's social and moral traits are predetermined by his or her inborn biological characteristics. It is the belief that different races should remain segregated and apart from one another. Such racist attitudes are what makes somebody racist. This is abhorred by Islam. This is totally shunned. There's no room for this in any of our Islamic history, you will not find this was ever entertained by the Prophet ﷺ, by the Sahaba. It was removed. It was there. We can't deny its existence. So this is something very important. When we say Islam is against racism, and when we say Islam, we don't here mean all Muslims are perfect and they don't have racism in them. We all fall short in different ways. Some people are making mistakes in terms of their personal lives, in terms of their prayers and fasting. Some have problems within their marital situations, and racism is a problem that exists in the Muslim community. Yes, we can't deny this, but it's not them practicing Islam that causes them to be racist. It's their lack of practice of Islam that causes them to be racist. Yesterday we were talking about forced marriages. It's a lack of practice of Islam that causes, or people do forced marriages and they don't listen to those who try to stop that. And this is something important to decipher and make a clear, distinguish, difference between what Muslims do and what Islam teaches. And that's just human nature, that whatever set of rules you follow, or ideology or religious system and belief system you follow, you may fall short in that. You may make mistakes in that. That doesn't mean the system is wrong or has fallen or has failed and so forth. It's human failure, of course, as Muslims. And we have to say this, we believe our religion to be correct and valid and perfect. It's not got any prejudices in there. It's not got any wrongdoing in there or biases that are unjustified, etc. So yes, we can't deny. I don't want to talk today and think that, oh look, we're talking about Islam, how perfect it is, and all of a sudden Muslims become perfect just because we're saying Islam is perfect. No, there's a clear difference between what people do, what Muslims do in this case, and what the religion teaches. And same analogy, and same rule should be applied to, and isn't, unfortunately, but it should be applied to terrorism as well. Unfortunately, some Muslims perpetrate terrorist acts. And not just terrorist acts, they do lots of things. There's 101 things that all people do, whether they're from any religion, any race and culture. It doesn't mean that race and culture or religion are now guilty of, it's not this shared guilt, or we don't actually believe in that Islam, that I don't have to share the guilt of what some other Muslim does. I pray for that person. I pray for his or her well-being and repentance and so forth, but I'm not responsible for another's actions. I'm responsible for helping that person. Maybe I'm responsible for being supportive and making my du'as and supplications, and depending on how I can help. And this is what we need to understand. So we'll be talking about eliminating and dealing with racism as well, inshallah ta'ala. And if you go back to this ayah, because we don't want to go too far ahead into the Quran or the Hadith, and before we touch on this ayah, what this ayah teaches us is a form of brotherhood. It doesn't mention, and this is an important thing in the Quran doesn't mention races, and it doesn't mention that this person is better than that person by way of race or so on forth. And so it mentions the few ayahs that talk about the differences of our colors, of our tongues, of our the nations and tribes, that we're different. It recognizes, and Allah created the differences himself. But what it always mentions in that context, and we have another ayah as well, often quoted as well in this regard, which is in Surah Ar-Rum, Surah 30, ayah number 22. Ayah number 21 is about marriage and spouses, and ayah 22 is about different people, different races, different ethnicities. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and they both start with the same word, which is وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ, and from his signs that you have spouses. From his signs, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ خَلْقُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ, is the creation of the heavens, the skies and the earth. وَاخْتِلَافُ أَلْسِنَتِكُمْ, and the difference, the diversity of your tongues, your languages. وَأَلْوَانِكُمْ, and literally alwan means color, right? And the differences in your color, in your skin tone here, we would say, right? إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ, surely in that there are signs. From his signs are the creation of the heavens and the earth, and the difference in your tongues and your colors. And surely in that are many signs, i.e., not just one or two. إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ, are major and many signs. For whom? لِلْعَالِمِينَ, for those who possess knowledge, who learn. And this is what we need to do. We need to understand and learn. And it's through knowledge we remove ignorance. And it's ignorance that brings about hatred. It's ignorance that brings about prejudice and racism and harm and forced marriages and evil acts. And it's knowledge that removes harm. It's knowledge that removes ignorance. And by the way, ignorance in Islam is synonymous with oppression. The word jahl in Arabic, jahl, means ignorance. Jahl also means oppression. Jahl also means oppression. Is a famous line of poetry often quoted and a very, very famous line of poetry in ancient Arabia quoted. which talks about jahl. But the meaning of the word jahl in the poetry is, which is ignorance, and commonly translated ignorance, and is the opposite of knowledge. In this line of poetry, actually means oppression. And it says that if somebody jahala alayna, if he's ignorant towards us, I harms us, lanaj'alanna alayhi, we will harm him and oppress him. Lanaj'alanna, will do jahl. Jahl al-jahilina, the oppression, the jahl. The word he's being used clearly to mean oppression here, of the jahilin, the period of ignorance, as it's called, the period of oppression it should be called, because that ignorance was a form of oppression to society. And this is the problem today, where a lack of education, and this is one of the first forms of a solution to the problems of today, including racism and institutional racism and so forth, that we're not teaching people, we're not educating people in the positions of authority, of decision making, of influence, and they, due to a lack of awareness, education, and due to their maybe lack of interaction with other groups and people, don't know how to do things. Actually, or ignorant, which is a blemish, it's not a valid excuse here. Right? I'm not trying to make excuse for these people. It's not, but it's because there's a reason for them behaving that way. And one of the ways of counteracting that is education, and this is why we should support anti-racist think tanks and groups, and not start this kind of idea, which unfortunately we see is the other side of the coin, or the response of, oh, why do we have to have these bodies for? Why do we have to be so passionate about anti-racism for? Why? This is a false argument. This is a form of aggression towards an individual. It's not a group. Rather than being supportive of the cause, we see as we aggress against it because it doesn't fit with our narrative of life. Again, a form of ignorance here, aggression and injustice and oppression through ignorance, through a lack of understanding. So this is one way which we need to support and not become emotional about, but rather become intellectual about and rational about, and realize that through education, through teaching and learning, hopefully we'll remove some of those prejudices. Hopefully we'll remove some of those incorrect understandings and feelings. And through experiences, and obviously interaction is one of the most important things, that we actually go out and meet people. One of my friends is a youth worker in Sheffield. So he does youth work, and he went to a community that was predominantly, and he really did this, and he told me, I was quite amazed, and I thought, wow, and it was a good thing he did. He went to a predominantly white community, as we'd say, council estate kind of thing, and he had to obviously deal with the youth there. He was sent there for his work, and he went in wearing a jubbah and a hat. And he doesn't wear that for work, of course, right? He's going to a place where he might get attacked even if you wear that, who knows, right? And he stood on the front and he started talking to them, and the people were like, and he's speaking to them and so forth. He goes, 1 minute, come back in 1 minute. He goes out, takes off his jubbah, takes off his, he's got he had a nice long hair at the time, and probably still has, mashallah. And he put his Man United top on, he had on underneath, he had tracksuit, but that's what he normally wears as well. May Allah forgive him for supporting Man United. And he came out onto the stage, onto the front, and started speaking to them obviously in his own language, in English, right, in Sheffield, where he's from, where I'm from. And they were shocked. He started talking about football to them. He started talking about, and he broke down the barriers they had before any conversation started. And he said they, start talking to me. They started talking about football. And he did his job basically, which was to help them, right? And he realized that to help these people, I need to connect with them. I need to help them understand, look, we're the same, we're humans. When it comes down to the bare bones, you take everything off and you take the appearances off. Underneath, the emotions, the blood is the same, the bones are the same, the soul, which is the ultimate reality, is the same. And we need to share this, and we need to support each other and be humane and humanitarian. And the first level of that is to just accept that everyone has a right to breathe the air around us, and to be free and feel safe, and not feel antagonized or threatened or etc. And this is something we share with everyone around us. And he did a brilliant job. And I just want to mention that also here, another form of solution is interaction, is to, within certain limits and parameters and organizations, to start talking to each other and to start realizing. And this is why you find, and this is studies have shown this, the least races of people are the ones that actually mix with other races and travel and experience. And the more prejudice amongst people, and racism is one of those forms of prejudice, is amongst those who isolate themselves and stay away from the other, or mixing, or and so forth. And this is something that can be very problematic. Hence, we need to get out a bit as well, right? Staying at home or staying within our own comfort zone doesn't help when we have a now the whole world is globalization, it's pluralistic, it's diverse, and that diversity is in our faces. It's unavoidable right now, and there's even laws now that are coming for, which are good laws, talking about how the workforce needs to be diverse and there needs to be a certain percentage of employees from various backgrounds. And this is something that, alhamdulillah, it's a good thing that certain government bodies are now pushing this, and it's part of certain requirements. Those in recruitment and so forth will know better the requirements and regulations that have been set for this. But it's important that we support those, and we talk about these things. And one of them is to actually come together. In an incident that happened in Medina in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, some people came to Medina and they saw that the Prophet ﷺ, he was being supported by the Ansar. They observed obviously that he had a support there in Medina. But then they saw people that were not from Medina and that were not Arab, and so they said the people of Medina, the Aus and Khazraj, they support their Prophet. He's from them. He's Arab. So they made this distinction between there's Arab Muslims, and then there's other people. Who are these other people? Among them was Sayyidina Suhaib, who was from Byzantine. So he was very light-skinned. There was Sayyidina Salman al-Farisi. He was a Persian. There was Sayyidina Bilal, for instance, right? So he noticed that these aren't, and he said this, that they said something along the words of, they don't seem like his people, but they're with him as well. The Prophet ﷺ became angry. And this is something very, very important, that we do need to show anger at sometimes. But anger has to be vented and channeled in the right way. Imam Ghazali talks about it. He says somebody who doesn't get angry is like a donkey. It's not a good thing to just not get angry at all. But to get angry for the right reasons is very important. So we should be angered. Anger here is the feeling of wanting to rectify something, even if that's by force, but the feeling there of anger, of wanting to change something, could be by the hand, could be by the tongue, could be with your heart, at least to hate that. That's the anger produces this emotion, this behavior. Is a good thing, and this is what Aisha said about the Prophet ﷺ. So I think putting the concept of anger here is very important, because it links very much so to any form of prejudice or bias or oppression. That the resultant most of the time, it's a form of anger. If this anger results in harm being caused can even result in mass killings and so forth. It comes from this is how dangerous anger can be, and this is how dangerous biases and prejudices and oppression and deeming others inferior again and again. And we don't need to look beyond certain countries where genocides occurred. Even if you look at the Holocaust in Germany, African countries where certain Rwandan genocide, and this was all based on a racial profiling, right? On constantly talking down and making someone else feel inferior, to the extent that the society started to believe this, and now that belief, that understanding, caused this reaction of wanting to harm someone, and then the response came, and then there was a full-blown out war, or brutal killings. It's not just these two examples. This has happened throughout history and around the world. But we see the root of it is the form of this ignorance and racism, that prejudice that comes about. So what did the Prophet do on this occasion? He got angry. I was just going to say that Aisha reports that the Prophet would never get angry for any worldly reason. So he didn't get angry because of I don't like the way he's speaking, the tone of his voice, or he didn't get angry for those reasons. People would speak to him brashly in all sorts of ways, and he would just deal with that. But when somebody said something or did something that contravened the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that went against the laws of Islam and the teachings of Islam, Sayyida Aisha said nothing could stand in the face of the anger of the Prophet ﷺ when the sanctities, these laws and sacred laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they were violated, then nothing could stand in the face of the anger of Allah, of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, until he had rectified that. He would fight to support that intisar, to make sure that the commands of Allah became dominant and victorious, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he would say to people, and what did he do in this occasion? He got up on the minbar, he saw what was going on, and in his wisdom, he didn't address people directly to attack them or to make them feel they're wrong. He knew this is a problem in society. If one person is saying it, then other people may have this idea. Educate, let people know. And he said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, O people, know that your Lord and Sustainer is one, your Rabb is one, your ancestor is one, your father is one, your faith is one, you are Muslims. One of you being Arab of you is not from your mother or father. It is no more than a tongue, a language. whoever speaks Arabic is an Arab, right? And this is a different version of the hadith often quoted as well. Now that all of you from Adam and others from dust, and therefore we're all equal. But in this, the Prophet ﷺ said, look, because people speak a language, that's fine. They can be called Arabs for that. But it doesn't matter about the color of their skin. It doesn't matter about, where they're from, whether they're from Persia or whether they're from Europe and so forth, right? So if you see people in our society, and if now look at us now, let's say we're talking about the West, we all speak English here, right? And by the way, we're not saying speaking Arabic is, makes you better or anything as well. We're just saying that was the language of the land. What else were they going to speak there? Now we're in the UK, we're in the West. We're going to speak, a European language, mostly English, French, Spanish, right? So if we speak that language and we have different colors and different ethnicities and so forth, we should share that. We're one. We are part of that society. We can integrate, we can communicate, we live our lives, for goodness sake. We buy and sell and eat and drink and talk and work and interact and provide services, and everyone helps. I don't like this concept of we built the economy. Everybody, for goodness sake, built the economy. Isn't everybody, whatever little part of society we do provide for, part of the building process, right? And working together will only strengthen that, and acknowledging everyone's input and efforts is something that's going to actually help each other, and not by saying, well, I've done more and you've done less, this, that, the other. That doesn't work, by the way. If you know about organizations and so forth, you don't criticize one person and praise another and then expect everything to be okay tomorrow, right? You need to understand that some people at one time will be productive, and at other times maybe need time for themselves or have other things in life. And that doesn't mean that one person is better than the other or more proactive, so he should get more attention. And we have to respect everyone, because in the background, everyone's doing something, everyone's trying to do something, everyone we should believe has a good intention. We should see the good in people, and this is what we need to see in everyone around us, whatever the shape, size and form they are, and get away from this idea of them and us. This is what racism does. It produces the idea of them and us, and this is a very, very dangerous, because like we said, it can result in a very brutal ending, a very dangerous ending. And I want to now just go to someone I think obviously well known to everyone and often quoted, and I myself read his biography many years ago, I think when I was in my late teens, and I have to say it had a profound effect on my life. And I would absolutely recommend every single human being to read the biography of Malcolm X. When it comes to this concept of racism, and especially with the Black Lives Matter movement in the US and around the world, he's somebody who's pivotal to that. And I believe, was amazing individual in himself, just who he was, and obviously what he spoke for and what he achieved ultimately. And those of you who read his biography or know about his life probably know a lot more than I do, but I haven't read the book, and obviously since then followed up on his quotes and sayings, and what's been shared about his life, and the things he stood for, and many articles as well. I just want to quote what he wrote about his experience, and it's well known, this quotation. It's in the film as well. There's a movie Malcolm X as well, by the way. Read the book. The book is much better than the movie itself, but if you don't have time or the effort, then do watch the movie, I suppose, because these lines are quoted in the movie itself. And this line is about, or this passage in the book is about, so just to give a background, and like I said, most of you will know, but just for those who are listening may not be too aware of who Malcolm X was. He was a young African American in America. He grew up with a difficult life. He was in jail, and he started to change his ways. And he started to learn, and he started learning the dictionary. So he literally was memorizing the dictionary and learning words, and he became very self-educated, very well-spoken, very wise. And again, look what changed him: education. And because education was in his roots, slowly, it was a long process for him, and you see that through his life. If you read the book, it wasn't overnight. That process of education and learning and self-development and that character he built was a journey over many, many years. And along that journey, he was actually prejudiced himself in the beginning. If you look at it, we can't deny that. But that wasn't because of him wanting human beings, let alone him wanting to be like that. It was because of what he'd been made into in society sometimes conditions us. So he actually, alhamdulillah, this is what makes him so powerful of a reminder to us and such a great inspiration for us. He changed that within himself, and then he started to change it within society. And, if you look back at history, he's probably one of the most influential people in this regard, in terms of eliminating racism and eliminating hatred and prejudices. So what happened to him? So he became a Muslim. He embraced Islam. He was with the Nation of Islam prior to that, which had some issues with it about, the black are superior to the white, etc. So he went with this. He had this attitude as well at some point in his life. He clearly mentions it in his book, and if you watch the movie, you'll know what I'm talking about. But when he went to Mecca, so he became a Muslim. Then one of the things you do as a Muslim is you go on the pilgrimage, and I want to talk about the pilgrimage in general as well as specifically the Malcolm X experience, rahimahullah ta'ala, may Allah have mercy on his soul. So he went there, and obviously he was expecting something else, because what he wrote clearly indicates his change and how he realized what Islam truly was, and he truly understood the meaning of Islam. He said when he wrote back to his wife, I think, or back to the people in America, he said there were tens of thousands of pilgrims from all over the world. Right? May Allah allow us to go to Mecca and perform pilgrimage this year. During this pandemic, it may be difficult. But we ask Allah to open the doors for those who are intending to go and make it easy for everyone. Ameen. So he said there was tens of thousands of people, there's millions now that come from all over the world. They were of all colors, from blue-eyed blondes to black-skinned Africans, but all were participating in the same ritual, displaying a spirit of unity and brotherhood. That my experiences, America had led, not criticism to America, it's just the society he lived in, right? Had led me to believe never could exist between the white and the non-white. You may be shocked by these words coming from me. This is his letter. This is what he wrote. But on this pilgrimage, what I have seen and experienced has forced me to rearrange much of my thought patterns previously held, and to toss aside some of my previous conclusions. This was not too difficult for me. Education sets you free. This wasn't too difficult for me. Despite my firm convictions, I have always been a man who tries to face facts and to accept the reality of life as new experiences and new knowledge unfolds it. This is what we need to do, dear brothers and sisters, dear listeners. New knowledge, new experiences will help us understand more of life. I have always kept an open mind, which is necessary to the flexibility that must go hand in hand with every form of intelligent search for truth. These words should be, written in gold, right, and displayed in every Black Lives Matter rally, in every, wherever there's a organization. This is the slogan here. This is what we should be presenting. These words, they are historical already, and they will be forever remembered of Malcolm X. Then he continued. He said, during the past 11 days, the pilgrimage days, here in the Muslim world, he's speaking about Makkah, I have eaten from the same plate, drunk from the same glass, and slept on the same bed or the same rug, while praying to the same God with fellow Muslims, whose eyes were the bluest of the blue, whose hair was the blondest of the blonde, and whose skin was the whitest of the white. And in the words, in the actions, and in the deeds of the white Muslims, I felt the same sincerity that I felt among the black African Muslims of Nigeria, Sudan, and Ghana. We are truly all the same brothers. We are all truly the same human beings, brothers and sisters. This is who we are, and this is what I want to talk about now in the terms of the look at Islam and how we stand. To start from the prayer, first of all, actually, I was going to go to the Hajj, but look at the prayer itself. Look at the Salah. You stand in a row. You stand together. There's one Imam. Whoever's most learned is the Imam, not the most white or the most black or the most Arab or whoever recites the Quran the best, whoever is the most pious, whoever is the most learned. And I remember an incident one of our teachers told us. He was a young African Imam. He was from somewhere in Africa. I forgot where he was from. I think Burkina Faso maybe. And he'd come to Syria as a student, as a nobody, you'd say, right? Just a little boy from Africa, learning from a very poor background, very destitute background, had nothing in life, no respect, no societal kind of status, no economic well-being and so forth. And he's come to Damascus, and he's learnt, obviously, the Quran, he's learnt the Sharia, he's learnt the Islamic sciences, and he's become very learned, mashallah. So one occasion, he's also very good reciter of the Quran. On one occasion, there's a big gathering, there's a big sort of conference and big event at the masjid, and everyone's there. And at the end, or during the conference, towards the end, the prayer time occurs. And I think it was the evening, so it was probably Maghrib, Isha, I think it was Isha maybe. And there's all these big sheikhs, right, from the Arab world and from Syria and Damascus and all these people. And they're all there, and obviously it's prayer time. And They say, one of the sheikhs say, bring him forward. We know who he is. He's learned. He's a beautiful reciter of the Quran. And they say to him, you will lead the prayer today. Look at this, how Islam, there could have been some big sheikh from the Arab world, there could have been some big, they put the best person forward to lead the prayer. And he actually said, I collapsed. He actually said, I couldn't believe they were putting me forward with such, even now today, if I was put forward in a massive gathering of ulama and great worldwide scholars, I'd probably, my knees would be shaking. I wouldn't even dare go forward. He was being put forward to be given that not what we could say necessary honor or status, but that recognition of what you're doing is for the sake of Allah. Hence, we're putting you forward for the sake of Allah, which is of honor. But it's for the sake of Allah. It's for the fact that you have within you the Quran, you have within you the prophetic guidance and the Sunnah, and we're honoring that. It doesn't matter about your outward appearance. That doesn't stop us. That doesn't make us think, why are we putting him forward? What will people think? No, we put this person forward. So in the prayer, it's the best who goes forward, who leads, who's adjudged to be the best, of course. And you stand in straight rows. Nobody's in front of other. Nobody gets the first row because they are a particular color or gender or etc. or language speaker, etc. It's the same prayer. Of course, Hajj is a very, very massively clear observation of this, where you all wear the same garments, the same simple clothes. If you're males, the same white pieces of cloth and ihram. You do the same rituals. There's no special rituals for a certain color or certain race. They're all the same. The laws of Islam, it doesn't matter who you are. The laws of Islam apply equally across the board. It doesn't, from your prayer, your fasting, your commerce, your the halal and haram doesn't change because of anything to do with the culture you're from, or the ethnicity you are, or the language you speak, and so forth. This is something very, very important. And Malcolm X, in his experience, is sharing that with us, that he saw that firsthand and how that impacted his life, right? And how that made him truly understand the meaning of Islam and the meaning of humanity. And this is what Islam brought forward, right? This is what Islam is there for. We're over, we're getting close to 2 billion Muslims worldwide, right? And I don't believe there's as much a diverse religion today on the face of the earth than Islam. It's reached every corner of the globe, every ethnicity, every country. It's spreading, and it's the true nature of Islam, which is that it's open to all. Just because you're an Arab doesn't make Islam more yours than it does to somebody from Iceland or Australia or Singapore. Islam is the same for everyone. The Prophet ﷺ is everyone's prophet. Yes, he was Arab in his language, in his country or land he was born, but he's the same prophet for everyone, and every one of us wants him to be our prophet, and we love him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He brings us together because he set that initial foundation that you're not going to be closer to me if you have a particular lineage. You're going to be closer to me because of your piety. What did the Prophet say? The closest to you on me of the day of judgment are the best in character. The closest to you on me on the day of judgment are the ones who send the most salutations upon me, not the one who's got a particular. And the Prophet said another hadith, Sahih Muslim, the one whose actions slow him down, his lineage will not make him go forward. Man batta'a bi amaluhu lam yusri' bihi nasabuhu. And whoever's actions slow him down, his nasab, your lineage and who you were born from, and won't take you further because of you don't have any actions, or that somehow this wasn't accepted by Prophet ﷺ. A famous incident as well, where a particular lady had committed a crime, and a punishment was to be enacted upon her, and she was from a very noble family and part of the society, and she had high status, and her family had high status, and it would have been a massive blemish on them and the whole kind of communal setup society had this gone ahead. So they got one of the people very close to the Prophet ﷺ, Sayyidina Osama bin Zayd, and he went and he said to him, look, intercede for her, get the Prophet, he loves you, you're like a grandson, you're like a son, grandson, like a very young child in the lap of the Prophet, grew up in the hands of the Prophet ﷺ. He was his son's adopted, so he was his adopted son's son of Zayd, Osama bin Zayd, radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma, may Allah please with them both. So Sayyidina Zayd went, and with the advice of the people, or the encouragement, let's get this lady off from this tribe, noble lady, she's made a mistake, but the Prophet will forgive if you speak to him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he went and he started speaking, and the Prophet realized what's going on, and the Prophet got extremely angry again, not because somebody's interceding for somebody else, no, because there's an injustice happening. The injustice is you're interceding for somebody due to their status in society, and you forgot about the commands of Allah. The commands of Allah have to be carried out. It doesn't matter where you belong in society. And the Prophet then said, this is what the previous people did. This is what destroyed the previous people. When the noble would do something wrong, they would forgive them. And when the weak and the poor would do something wrong, they would establish justice, or establish the ruling and enact the punishments upon them. This is not, and then he said something which is hard to repeat because I don't like saying this particular words, so I'll change the words to help you understand what the Prophet said. So he said, even if his daughter, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he mentioned his daughter's name, Sayyidah Fatima radiallahu anha, were she to, in his words, steal, obviously he was making a point here, she would never do so, of course, right? Then he would have cut her hand off. This is what he said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? It's hard saying that because nothing said we shouldn't think of like that or even have that. But he was making a very, very, very important point. He didn't use anybody else's name. He didn't say another. He even used the name of his own daughter, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, saying that, look, the justice that we have to establish in Islam is at the root of Islam. Even the Quran, if you look deep in the Quran, it says, speak the truth even if it's against yourselves. Right? That means if the non-Muslim is on the truth and you're on the falsehood and it belongs to him, then speak the truth. Speak the truth wherever you go, even if it's against your own family members. There's no preference given to somebody just because of their status in society or their religion or color. Because of that, when it comes to societal issues, work, pay, opportunities, then we look at who deserves it, who's the best at it. I'll give you 3 examples in our tradition. On one occasion, there was an incident between the leader, the caliph, I think he was Abdul Malik ibn Marwan, I think it was one of the Umayyad caliphs, and his cousin. So they went to the Qadi. Look, even the caliph and leader had to go to the Qadi, the judge. And when they went there, obviously one's a caliph, he's a leader of the whole country, he's leader of the Muslims. And his cousin, so it was obviously a high profile case, right? So the cousin, I've got his name, he sat in front of the judge, because that's what you do, you sit in front of the judge, sits on one side and the plaintiff and the defendant and all this kind of stuff, right? They all sit on the other side. So there was a case. The caliph went to sit next to the judge because he's the caliph, right? I'm going to sit over there with you. This is where I sit. So as he went to sit there, the Qadi, the judge said, you got to sit over there, not here. Because what do you mean? I'm the caliph. He goes, well, in this case, you got, it's your cousin. And how can I give you the place here? What does that mean? I'm going to rule in for your favor. It's a court case. Go and sit in your place. So even the caliph was put in his place because of the justice we have to establish in the Islamic framework. And our leaders, our scholars, the great, ulama of the past weren't shy to put this into practice. The famous incident of Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu, when he was the caliph himself, and his armor went missing, and he found his armor with a Jewish person, and he said, that's my armor. He said, no, it's not. And the Jew and Sayyidina Ali went to the court, and I think it was Qadi Shuraih at the time, famous Qadi, even in the time of Sayyidina Ali, who was from the 2nd generation. They sat before the judge, and the judge said, bring your witnesses, or Ali. If you, and he didn't call him Amir al-Mu'mineen, it would have been an injustice. So he called him by his name, etc. It would be very fair. And the Jewish person knew this is the leader of the Muslims. He was well aware of who's who in society. But he was shocked at the fairness. And then the witnesses brought forward by Sayyidina Ali were his servant Qumbul, and his son Hassan, or his son Hussein, one of his sons. So as they came forward to give their testimony, the Qadi said, I can't accept this. A servant can't testify for his master, and a son can't testify for his father in Islamic courts. That's prejudice. It's already an unfair bias there. So we don't bring some other witnesses from the community that know that this belongs to you. They can vouch for it, and you didn't sell it, etc. And it's been missing for so long. If somebody testifies to that, we can accept their testimony and we'll act accordingly. We'll judge accordingly. He said, I haven't got nobody else. I can't bring any other witnesses forward or testimonies. So the Qadi, the judge, said, well, in that case, the shield and the armor, etc., belong to the Jewish. And he was shocked, like, how can the leader of the society, first of all, go to a case at court, let alone just take it off me. And second of all, his testimony, and he's saying the truth, by the way, it did belong to Sayyidina Ali, and he did admit it in the end, saying that it was yours, but it came into my hands and I wanted to keep it, etc. And it all got resolved in the end, right? But look at the justice, and these are examples in terms of various societal issues, court cases, etc. But the same applies to all forms of, interactions and judgments, and racism is one of them. Racism, is something that has become a problem within certain Muslim communities because we isolate ourselves. And sometimes, like I said, I'm not trying to find excuses for people, but just like it happens in Western societies, it may happen in Eastern society. Nobody's immune from this, right? We shouldn't think that we all, just because Islam is in a country, that those Muslims are now not going to be racist. No, you'll find that in them. Why? Because of the lack of interaction, the lack of exposure, the lack of communication and experience, and so forth. So I pray that in our coming generations, and as time goes, it needs to change right now, but the seeds need to be planted now, and the work needs to be done now, so that in very few years, hopefully, but hopefully within a generation, we see massive changes. We have seen changes, by the way. We should look at the positive, that there was a lot more worse things going on before, and we have changed. Let's hope it doesn't go back. Let's hope it doesn't regress. Let's keep moving forward and helping each other to move forward, inshallah ta'ala. And on this regard, I want to share some of my own experiences to help you understand. I was lucky probably because I read the book of Imam Malcolm X, and I can think from that point on, alhamdulillah, I've never had a bias towards anyone really, from whatever religion, culture, race they're from. And what reinforced that for me was soon after I read that book, maybe 5-6 years after, I traveled to Syria. And if you travel to Syria, you think you're just going to meet Syrians. No, I met the whole world, because in Syria you had the whole world, whole Muslim community come to study the religion of Islam. Just like you have in Makkah, Medina, you meet people from all around the world. Syria is very, very diverse, very, very multicultural. So you had people from all over Africa. I could name several African. I've got friends, so I didn't just see people here. I actually became friends, and I became brothers, and we sat at the same tables. And I was looking at some pictures the other day from a brother from Nigeria, a brother from Mali, brother Sheikh Abu Bakr from Nigeria, brother Sheikh Muhammad or Mamado Fadi from Mali. These are my brethren. We used to sit on the same table, we used to eat together, cook for each other, try the cuisine. And never at any point did I feel, because of his skin color, I feel awkward around him, or he's less than me, and so forth. And we had people from various European countries. There was a big Turkish community in Damascus, people from Malaysia, Indonesia, even some other Arab countries like Morocco, and there was students from Tunisia, especially a lot of them, one or two from Egypt as well. That comes into Africa as well, I suppose, and other areas of the world. Singapore, we had my good friend Hafizul Qarnain. He was a funny lad. We used to poke him in his ear, and he used to get all crazy. And I remember these times we had with our community, our brothers. There was no, alhamdulillah, there was no sense of superiority for any of us. We all consider each other brothers for the sake of. We all sat at the same desks, studied together. We spent a lot of time together, of course, and this is what we need to do. And I think all of us went home without, I think all of it home, we probably see the problems that others have now, and how people are prejudiced against certain races or other people because they haven't had the same experiences. They haven't been through the same, learning processes in life. It doesn't have to, you don't have to go abroad and travel, but we do have to communicate. We do have to learn. We do have to attend some type of training session or some type of exposure to this. Everyone does. It's not going to happen just sat at home. It's going to get worse. You sat amongst yourselves and your same people, again, the same family members or same community. And this is a culture that's unfortunately become more and more prevalent. I remember when I was young in Sheffield, a particular area, we just went up the road to a particular area, and I remember it wasn't a racist thing. It was just this kind of, again, a prejudice that, why are you guys in my area for? There was, Pakistanis, Muslims, non-Muslims. There was just a group of people that were in another area. But the people of this other area, this one person, it was just one person, not to say the whole area was bad. But he's like, you can't come into my area, go away. Like, does this land belong to you that we can't walk here? We can't go and see our friends that are from this. And this is this gang culture and this all kind of territory and stuff, right? This is another form of prejudice, another form of discrimination, another form of hatred, another form of violence, and therefore oppression. And it's going to cause a lot of problems in our society. So we've got to understand to accommodate each other. We've got to understand to love your fellow human being. We want to share the same values of having a family, having the freedom to be who we are, our own space, having the respect to go around in society and do something of whatever we want, really, to obviously within limits of respecting others. I want to sit in the park. I want to talk to somebody. I want to feel happy and free walking up and down my road and my street and in my community. We have a right to this. These are human rights that we all need to respect for each other. And that means that you shouldn't violate that for somebody else or feel that somebody doesn't deserve that. So what happens to be the same street as you? So what happens if the person's from a different area than you? So what happens if there's a different color on the person's face or a different language that person speaks? If you can't accommodate that, there's something seriously wrong internally. And this is where the change needs to come. And this is where what Islam addresses, that it's internally we need to change. So please, my advice today is to read. First of all, I would actually say read the biography of Malcolm X. That I think would inspire thousands and millions of people itself. For sure, I owe a lot to Malcolm X without even meeting him, and all the work he's done is still impacting humans today, the world today, and he's a revolutionary individual in the 20th century that we should really look towards today, and his teachings and his works and his articles and books that he's written. He wrote many things, and he gave many speeches, some of which are recorded or which we have access to. And his biography is something that I highly recommend, which would help tackle some of the issues amongst our community. Second of all, we said here, changing the way we think in our policies, in the way we interact with others, and interaction itself and experience with each other, and learning from each other and spending time with each other and expanding our friendships. It sometimes comes easier for some people because they've got a common goal. I mean, look at it at school, right? We all mixed with each other. We had friends from different backgrounds. We got along with each other. We respected each other. We would have stood up for each other. We did stand up for each other, etc. Like my own personal experience of going to Syria, spending 5-6 years there with all sorts of people. From the blackest of the black to the whitest of the white to the brownest of the brown, whatever. With all different face complexions and preferences and food. Taste lots of different foods. It was a pleasant time we had, right? These experiences will help us to remove some of the barriers, and helping others to have those experiences as well will also have and these kind of things as well. So hopefully we can start educating each other in a way. So reading, experiences, and of course, if you are at a level where you can be part of certain policy making or more sort of governmental or local government, even, not have to be at the highest levels, but even at the level you're at, if we can start making a form of change, impact, raising the issues and having the conversations, are we keeping this in mind when we're talking about this? Are we, doing this whilst this is happening? Or, are we taking into regard all of the biases, all of the prejudices? And obviously, not just racism, there's also other things such as gender equality, gender fairness, etc., religious beliefs. We need to accommodate everyone. But and there are rules and laws in most countries in place to support this, but are they actually being, adhered to? From the comments that have come in, I'd like to say one thing: I'm not responsible for anybody else. I said that at the beginning. I've never felt a collective responsibility for what somebody else has done. I said I will make dua for others, and we make dua for and when Muslims do something bad, I don't feel guilty about it. I feel quite sad about it that somebody's done bad. I pray for the ones that are affected and so forth. So if mosques, if people are doing this, I feel a responsibility of having to deal with that. Yes, that having to change that, having to talk against it, having to educate those people, but I can't answer on those people's behalf. This is one thing we got to learn in life. When you see evil from someone, nobody else can answer for their evil. Nobody, not their brother, not their sister, nobody. The first and foremost, the most people affected by people's evil are the family members. The family members of those who've committed murders are the first ones that are the of course, the victim is the first, and their family is obviously much a more difficult situation and state. But from the side of, well, the person's done wrong, do something about it. You're his family. They can't do anything. They're the family, but they didn't want that to happen. They didn't expect that to happen. They're not a part of that. They are against that. So we're totally against all these forms of racism that may exist in certain cultures and societies that may be Muslims, that may be in certain masajid. If you've experienced this, we are totally against this, and we do speak against it. We do try to educate others, but we can't answer on their behalf. We can't say to you that, oh yeah, we're sorry for that. Because we don't have a control over that. Like I said, I don't feel. Why should I feel guilty over somebody else's actions? Right? It's part of life. Somebody oppresses me. They oppress me, I've got to deal with that, right? So what we say is we need support. We need to now give support to the victim and the family of the victim and those around the victim, and we need to go and address these issues. So and this has to be done, amicably, fairly, within the right direction. So you can't go randomly and just get out your, self and do it. Vigilantism and kind of this kind of, it has to be done through the authorities. So go and speak to the authorities, go and raise these issues at the doorsteps of these people, and make the make your voice heard. And if it's not, then take it further and further. this is what we need to do in today's day and age. If there are wrongs going on and there's the law is being broken, by the way, right? There's actually laws that are being contravened in the lands we live in. Then we need to tell the authorities, we need to bring in those people that can make the change. And at the same time, we educate. That's the job here we have, to keep educating, to keep helping people through personal experiences. Not obviously we're in a virtual world right now, but actually sitting with people, educating them, training them up. And there's many, and here religion doesn't really have to come into it, but here there's many bodies right now helping people in this regard, right? And the anti-racism think tanks and lobbies, and no to racism, eliminating racism. They've had funding in the past, and then there's private funding and so forth. You can support these movements and help them to keep the workshops going, keep the toolkits developing to address the issues of today, the resources, and to keep going out there. There's people traveling up and down the country trying to do a great job and help others. Obviously the movement is limited, so it's all gone virtual and online. It is out there, so do look up anti-racism and no to racism movements. There are certain Muslim movements out there, as well as just general movements. Like I said, it doesn't really matter about religion. We need to do it as a whole and come together to do this. So we need to hopefully support those that are affected and give them comfort, give them obviously the emotional support, the spiritual support, and acknowledge that it's wrong. That this is the first thing of rectifying any problem, is to acknowledge there's something going wrong, and then to address it in the right mechanism. And I don't like talking about things and saying that it can all be sorted out, it's all this, it's all that. Every situation is unique. Every situation requires a unique response from the people that are there, and so forth. And with the virtual world, this is a problem. I'm going a bit off topic here, but this is a problem. People take one problem and they throw it around the world, and they say, "Oh, what's happened here? What are you going to do about it?" There's people there that will do something about it. Go speak to the right, and if they're not, then that's an injustice without a doubt. Maybe it needs to be taken to a further level, right? But that's where it's got to be done. We can make our voice heard elsewhere. We can raise the issue elsewhere, so it's prevented, so that we educate people. We see that's going on, but you can't start attacking others or criticizing others because of because they may be of the same, like for instance, just right now we can't start criticizing the police force halfway across the world because a police force in America did something wrong, or certain members of that police force. Even the whole police force we can't criticize. Yes, there may be good cops and bad cops. We see enough movies to figure that out, right? But doesn't mean the whole group is guilty by association. Just like we can't accuse all Muslims of being guilty for what one Muslim does, or we can't accuse the whole masjid and its members because of an incident that occurred in the masjid due to one individual that may have been prejudiced and may have been racially motivated in what he decided or did, or she did even. So we've got to be careful how we throw about these kind of problems that occur and then start branding Islam or Muslims responsible for them. Look, I said to you at the beginning, human nature is like this, and it's going to occur. It will continue to occur. It's all about regulating it. It's all about managing it. It's all about dealing with it and reducing it and making it as better as possible. I don't think we get to perfection. That's just not probably one of we should aim to. Of course, we should try and get to the closest we can to a problem-free society, not just racism. But this is the thing: we're not going to get to that perfect level overnight and eliminate it. We're going to have to go through a lot of struggles, and in those struggles we need to work with everyone around us and be supportive and constructive and positive and build together. And that's what I'd like to finish with. We need to finish on positives, in that this can be eliminated, this can be reduced, we can deal with it, but we have to come together and support each other. So right now, one piece of advice, and these are the parting advice I'd give: be productive on social media. If you're going to get involved, why get involved and start throwing loads of negativity? But there's trolls that want, this is the thing people don't realize. When there's somebody who gives negativity to you and you respond negativity, you fall into their trap. This is what they want. Keep fighting each other online. Keep this animosity and hostility going online. But they're wrong. They are wrong. They may well be. Oh, there's no voice for us. Yes, but do it with positivity. Do it with with high moral ground. Don't stoop to the level of these people. And this is what happened during I think it was the Libyan conflict, right? With the Italians and the Libyans, right? And you look up the history if you know more about that. But one of the leaders who was fighting the resistance against the Italians was Umar al-Mukhtar, great leader Umar al-Mukhtar. And the Italians at the time, again, Italians now aren't responsible for that, right? We don't hold them responsible. And this is another problem, right? It doesn't just because certain people's ancestors were great and they did good things in history, and now certain people's ancestors were not so great and the society was bad, doesn't mean now the offspring now 100 years later, 50 years later, are evil and good just because of their ancestors, right? So I'm not talking about everyone and every, like, good example of that would be Germans and the Jews, right? Doesn't mean just because the certain Germans did this in the past, like we hate Germans now, astaghfirullah. Like, why would we hate them for? Yes, we dislike that part of history and those people, but we don't throw it. Of course, there are people that carried that on as well. I'm not trying to say they've all changed, right? But the majority have changed, hopefully. Hopefully, I don't know the numbers and the statistics on that. But this is the point I'm trying to make, that we don't hold everyone responsible. So when the Muslims, in this case, the Libyans, they actually they were brutally defeated in the end, but they managed at certain points to have the upper hand on the Italians, and it was a resistance kind of movement. At one point, they had prisoners, and the Muslim prison had been tortured and killed and humiliated. So the Libyans, they said, look, we should do this to their prisoners now. We've got these Italian soldiers, that's who they were. Let's do this to them as a retaliation, right? And what did the leader say, Imam Mukhtar? He said, since when did they become our teachers? Since when did they become our teachers? Since when do we take our example and our methodology from them? Are we going to do this because they did it? We made them our influencers, our teachers. So this is the problem right now. When people throw hatred at you and you throw it back, you've made them influencers over. You've reacted, and you've now. So what did he do? He didn't mutilate these individuals. He didn't humiliate them. This is not what he was taught from his understanding of the situation, which is he was a Muslim, of course, and he was applying Muslim laws, Islamic laws, etc. He was respectable to the prisoners and so forth, and he didn't take the way or the lower way. So this is something to be aware of, guys, that we are going to get involved in discussions and so forth, but don't reduce who you are, and you'll only benefit everyone by doing that. The fact that you stay to that high level will actually influence that person to become better. Okay, I was a bit of a buffoon, I was a bit ignorant, I was a bit if there's absolutely no good intention in that person, then so be it. That's a waste of time anyway. There's people like this in the world, and we just need to keep trying our best in a positive way to help counteract this, inshallah ta'ala. Thank you for joining me, and I pray Allah blesses you all in these difficult times. Keep working hard, keep reading, keep getting involved, keep supporting this area and other areas. We talk about all areas, and today was racism, tomorrow it may be another topic. Jazakumullah khairan. Take care, and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.